Hi again. So now we are starting off with law of tort. Tort is referred to when a person deviates from the right path. Okay. So any case that relates to such a scenario where the person is acting in a wrongful manner or in an illegal manner is considered to be tort case. It is going to cover both criminal and civil acts. Also, tort cases are independent of contract. For contract, we have law of contract, which we are going to do in the next class. But tort cases do not deal with contract cases. Now, according to law of tort, the case must be filed within 6 years of normal tort claims, that okay, normal wrongdoing has happened. And in case of personal injury, if somebody is being damaged, let's say two people start fighting, the first one was the person who initiated it, and he caused injury to the other person. Then in case of personal injury, the other person needs to present this case within 3 years. But if it's a normal tort case, there has been no personal injury, but there was a wrongful activity, then in that scenario, within 6 years you must file it. Now, types of tort. Let's say somebody came into your land without asking for your permission, entering somebody's property, staying at that property, or trying to modify that property, again without the owner's permission. All of this are going to be referred to as trespass to land. Trespass is going to occur when this person is going to act on anybody's property intentionally, or he probably does not know, but still he is modifying the other person's property, or he is doing that forcefully due to pressure coming from any other third party, let's say. So sometimes this happens that the authorities do not get involved with modifying your house themselves. They ask somebody who is a third party person to do it for you in place of them. So in this situation, if the authority has already asked the court for order, then that is fine. But if the authorities have not asked the court for an order, then they are going to be answerable in the court. Okay. Now, in case of forcefully, the person forcing will be liable for tort. Not the person who is being forced, the person who is actually forcing. They are going to be liable, because basically the person who is being forced is probably weak, or he probably does not have enough authority to speak up, which is why he is being forced, right? So actually the culprit is the person who is forcing. Now, tort occurs on land, below the land and above the land, which means below the land means in case of underground. Let's say if you have a house, right now it is all land, okay, you want to build a house over here. So even if you're modifying or you're trying to make some amendments underground in that property without asking that person who is the owner, without asking the person's permission, you're still doing a trespass to land. Also, if the land already had a property above it and you were trying to make modifications to the property without asking for the permission of the owner, then also you're doing something wrong and you will be held in the court. Now, nuisance. If a person is using his property but he is affecting other people a lot, let's say people play very loud songs, so the neighbors get disturbed, right? And when the neighbors get disturbed, this is basically creating a nuisance. So they're going to complain to the authorities that please come and tell our neighbors that you need to stop playing such loud music. Play music, but keep it to that extent that only you can hear it. Okay, so if the people are being affected initially, that is fine, that is controllable. But if it becomes uncontrollable and you're constantly affecting people, then you can be taken to the court. You can be sued against. Defamation. In this scenario, a person makes an act in order to ridicule other people, to make third party laugh. Let's say if I am the person who is trying to ridicule you just to make my friends laugh, then this is something really bad, right? This is something that is going to make you feel bad about yourself, and this might as well affect your mental health. Bullying is one of the examples of it, right? So defamation is a civil offense and it is known as slander, because verbally or non-verbally you're trying to affect that person, even though that person might not have done anything to you. But if it increases, this becomes a criminal offense. How is it increasing? People share private pictures of other people, right? So if people are sharing private pictures of other people in order to just ridicule them, in order to make fun of them, then this is a criminal offense. Right now, nowadays in cybercrime, this is happening, that people hack your account and then they threaten you that okay, we are going to share your private pictures with other people. So what are they doing? That is a criminal offense. Direct and injurious falsehood. Tort of deceit is going to occur when a person intentionally does a fraud with the other party in order to cause loss to the other person. So let's say I am coming in contract with the other person. Let's say I am coming in contract with you, and I know that 50% profit and 50% profit should be shared, but I am intentionally causing a damage to you. I am intentionally doing a fraud against you. Why? Because probably there was a lot of jealousy within me. So what I did was I told my suppliers that he no more is my, like, you're no more my partner, and I told them that the new partner has come in and my percentage profit is 80% and their percentage profit is 20%. This way I am making secret profits. So I am basically defrauding you. Why? Because I provided some suppliers with a misleading information that you're no more the partner, so they shouldn't contact you. And secondly, I told them that with the new partner, now my percentage profit is 80% and 20%. So I get to make most of the profits. So you're at a loss, right? Assault. In this scenario, a person is being threatened by the other person. Let's say this threat could be physical threat. This threat could be of family as well. Let's say people get threats that okay, we are going to kidnap your family member, or we are going to harm you. That is an assault. Okay, so it is not necessary that somebody is being kidnapped or somebody is being harmed. The threat itself is enough to make the other person feel disturbed, which is why it is considered to be a crime. Battery. a person is going to perform in an offensive manner to cause harm to the other person. Now, this does not mean that he is trying to cause harm, he is trying to cause loss. It is not necessary. As long as his intention is to harm the other person, this is a crime, even if actual loss occurs or not. Okay, so let's say if I am trying to taunt somebody, or if I am trying to abuse somebody, now my intention might not be to cause physical harm to them, but I am at least causing mental harm to them, right, by abusing them every now and then. False imprisonment. Sometimes this happens that the policemen often do this, or they end up doing it, that they do not have the legal right to imprison somebody, but out of their personal grudge they make something up, they make up a story and they're going to imprison the other person. This is false imprisonment, and the other person should be answerable for it. So that police officers should be answerable to it, and they are. Negligence. In this case, a person breaches his duty of care and causes loss to other parties. Now, this is done unintentionally, but the person owes a duty of care. Owes duty of care means he needs to pay off for the other person's losses. Also, he now needs to either perform in a specific manner to recover from those damages that he has caused to the other person, or he needs to pay monetary damages. Okay. Now, to whom do we owe duty of care? You as a person owe duty of care to your neighbor. Okay. You must make sure that you don't do any such activity that causes adverse effect or adverse impact on your neighbor. So, now two major flaws of this neighbor principle include that you fail to consider the impact of social benefits that you can provide to them, because neighbor principle basically says that do not affect your neighbors. Now, it is not always necessary that you affect your neighbors adversely. You could also positively affect your neighbors. So, the neighbor principle is basically failing to consider the impact of social benefits on duty of care, and secondly, it fails to consider the impact of any foreseeability of loss. Like, you do not know that your particular act is going to lead to how much loss of a neighbor. Probably does not lead to any loss of your neighbor. So then you should be allowed to perform that duty, but you're not. Now, Ann's test or two-stage test. According to this approach, a person is going to owe duty of care if sufficient proximity or relation exists. So you have a considerable relation with the other person. Now, being a neighbor is a considerable relation, or being in contact with somebody is a business relation, or having personal relations with the person is a considerable relation. Secondly, loss is foreseeable, and you being imposed the duty of care should only exist when definitely you have a considerable relation with them. You can't say that, okay, I do not know somebody. Let's say if I am uploading something on the internet. Now, you know, nowadays, because of the Palestine situation and everything, a lot of people do share something that others cannot see. There are a lot of people who are weak at heart, so they cannot watch those abuses that the Palestinians are facing, right? So if I am sharing something on my Instagram story, let's say, I do not know that how a third person is going to be affected by it, and it cannot be considered that I am going to think about it. Why? Because it is my Instagram profile. If I am sharing a story, I am not going to consider everybody who is looking at that video or watching that video, right? So yes, if I have a personal relationship with somebody, or if I am in a business relationship with somebody, or if I am close to somebody, then I do have a relationship with them, and I need to consider what information I share with them, or how am I treating them. But in case of social media, I cannot consider everybody who is in my friend list and then post something. No. If somebody is being disturbed by it, then they should stop watching that video rather. Right? They can't tell me that I have a duty of care that I need to fulfill whilst posting this video, because that is my profile. I have complete right to post whatever I want, right? So according to Ann's test, compensation for loss of market value is going to be given, but that should be considered using pure economic loss. That what is going to be our loss, you need to consider that. However, according to Caparo criteria, loss of market value is not awarded because it is not measurable, as market value is a subject matter. Market value keeps changing. Today the market value might be different, tomorrow the market value might be different. It depends on demand and supply. So Caparo criteria is saying that market value is a subjective criteria, therefore you should not base your decisions on that. Pure economic loss is defined as one which is not a physical loss to property, that is damage, rather it relates to loss of market value. So if your market value has fallen, this is a pure economic loss to you. Damaging the physical property is not pure economic loss. Caparo criteria has overruled Ann's approach, and Caparo criteria and Ann's test are same in relation to all other matters except for the matters of market value. Now, professional negligence, when a person is going to breach a business relationship, that is considered to be professional negligence. So they have agreed on a contract and the clauses of it, but then they end up not acting in that manner. For example, if you become an ACCA member, but you are not abiding by the ACCA's professional code of conduct, you are basically conducting professional negligence. So what is an auditor required to do? So an auditor requires to take extra care. He needs to practice skepticism. He needs to make sure that he checks the financial statements of a company properly, and then he needs to comment on it. But if he is not doing it, if he is not taking a good look at the financial statements, rather he is just doing it quickly in order to get rid of his duty, so he is basically doing a professional negligence, and he is going to be liable for it. Now, standard of care, according to this issue, duty of care of a person changes due to several factors. What are those? Age, competency and skill. As your age increases, as your skills, as your competency level increases, you are expected to be more careful. because you are experiencing seriousness of injury. You, whilst you are taking any action, you need to consider the risk of injury in that. So in case of auditor's responsibility is a very big responsibility. So he also needs to look and think about the seriousness of the injury he will be causing. What injury is he causing? If he does not give the financial statements a good look, if he does not check them properly, and he just says that okay, financial statements give a true and fair view, even though they do not, even though there has been a hidden fraud in it, even though there has been window dressing done in it, then they are causing a loss of all of the shareholders. And tomorrow when he gets caught, then he will be personally liable for all of it. Probability or likelihood of injury. What are the chances of injury? Common practice relates to what are the general practices in society. Does the society take a lot of care, or is the society generally accepting negligence? Cost of safety measures or precautions. If you require safety measures, then is the benefit of safety measures more than the cost? If yes, go for it. But if the cost is more than the benefit, then don't go for it. Social benefits, you need to also consider how are you socially impacting the people. Is it beneficial, or are your acts adversely going to impact them? Causation means to establish a cause or relationship between the wrong act and loss caused. So there are two tests, but for test. In this situation, you're going to check the link between the reason and the loss. So it says, according to this approach, causal link exists if the loss would not have occurred had the wrong act not been performed. So they're basically saying that what would have happened if the wrong act would not have occurred. But now since the wrong act has occurred, what are the losses that you're going to face? So they basically check the reasoning that lead to that loss. Okay, so this test is going to fail in case of a scenario where there are a lot of reasons why a loss exists, because in that scenario you can't make one person liable, right? For example, if God forbid a factory catches fire, now there could be multiple reasons for a factory catching fire. There could be a short circuit, there could be a bursting of a cylinder, there could be negligence of a particular person, there could be cloth catching fire from the machine, could be anything. Now there are multiple reasons, and all of those could have occurred at one place. So you can't exactly say that what was the link between the cause. Multiple factor test. According to this approach, a person is liable even if he is one of the reason of loss. So if you become one of the reason of losses, you might not have to bear the whole liability yourself, but you would have to bear some of the liability. Novus actus intervenus. As per this rule, if causal links is broken due to intervention, then the defendant is not going to be responsible, because the loss was caused because somebody intervened in it, not because you were performing a particular act. So let's say somebody forces you to trespass the land. So somebody is intervening, right? Your intention was never to trespass the land, but you are being made to do it. Therefore, you are not responsible. The person who is the cause of this whole scenario is going to be responsible. The person who is forcing you is going to be responsible. So intervention can be made by nature. God forbid any natural disaster occurs, tsunami or flooding or heavy rains are sometimes a disaster. Volcanoes, anything could happen. Secondly, claimant. That is, if due to act of victim loss is increased, then defendant is not responsible. Let's say if the victim themselves got involved, let's say two people are fighting. Now the victim was the reason why the fight increased. They were initially verbally fighting, verbally abusing each other, but then the victim held something and they hit it to the defendant. But the defendant saved themselves, and rather it bounced back to the victim, causing a loss for them. So who is the reason now? The victim themselves are the reason, right? Now if the victim themselves are the reason, then how can the victim take the defendant to the court? Sometimes this happens, that if you're hitting something and it touches the wall, the other person has saved themselves, but it touches the wall and it bounces back to you, and you get hit then. So you become the reason for your own damage. Then third party, that is, if due to act of third party loss is increased, then again defendant is not responsible. You are responsible, or the third party is responsible. Now defenses, if defendant can prove a defense, then remedy payable will be reduced. Valid defenses include contributory negligence, that the victim himself is responsible for the loss, and if that is proved, then the victim is the one responsible. Act of God, again natural disaster. Voluntary not fit injuria, if the victim himself has given consent for loss, then he is responsible. Remoteness of damage, court of law before awarding remedy is going to check whether the loss is remote or not, whether it has occurred due to wrong act or not. So direct consequence approach, according to this approach, culprit has to pay remedy for every loss that occurred because of the culprit's wrong act. Foreseeability approach is the approach where remedy is payable for the loss which was reasonably foreseeable, that you could foresee that this loss could have happened. Therefore, if the particular person acted in that manner, then he has to pay for that remedy.